studio for our third conversation. We do have Mzalendo Mutemi wa Kiama. He's a community organizer with Kongamano la Mapinduzi Movement. And the conversation, of course, today is about the escalating democracy crisis, the democratic space, rather, in our country of Kenya. So, Mzalendo, Kiama, karibu tena sana. Once again, nice to have you. You're actually the first repeat guest we've had.
Asante sana.
Yes, so
I'm honored, I'm humbled.
Yes, wewe ndio wa kwanza ambaye amerudi hapa after amekuwa hapa before. So karibu tena sana. So let's just get into it before we get into the democracy of this country, which by the way is largely is largely determined by what IEBC does every 5 years. James Oswago, former CEO of IEBC, has said that we might need to consider how IEBC is constituted. And he said, for instance, we need to, once there's a vacancy at the IEBC, he said LSK, NCIC, and the religious groups should come together and choose someone who is going to, be in a commission that now is going to constitute the IEBC. I don't know, have you ever thought of how the IEBC could be constituted differently from what we currently have? The process that we currently have?
Let me tell you a story about a Kenyan.
Please
who's in the UK. Every time there's an election, whether it's at the ward level, county level, or national level, he has volunteered to participate, to be one of the officials in the elections.
All right.
So on the day of the election, what happens is the local election management team deliver ballots and ballot boxes to his house. And then he goes to wherever the election is being held, whether it's a school or a town hall or something.
Are we talking about here in Kenya or the UK?
No, in the UK.
Oh, okay.
And he sets up the boxes and people come, pick their ballots and vote. And then he collects the boxes, puts them in his car and delivers them to the electoral office.
Okay.
I don't know whether you're seeing that picture.
This is an individual.
He's an individual. He's just a volunteer. Actually, a Kenyan. He's a Kenyan who's
living in the UK.
Who's living in the UK.
All right.
He's a Somali. He's a Kenyan of Somali extraction. And that shows the level of trust. Now, someone has said that it doesn't matter whether you put Jesus as a chairman of the IEBC, as long as there's no trust, as long as there's political manipulation. So the issue is not who are the commissioners, it's not who's in the secretariat. It is what are they let to do?
Okay.
How are they let to run the
election?
And I was watching a video yesterday, interestingly, of a young man and a team. I just called the young man's name is called Peter Kibaki. And he proposed a solution to restore trust in elections using blockchain. Blockchain is computer technology that is about making sure that as much as possible, everything is verifiable, it is not hackable, it is secure, etc. And I'll give you an example of blockchain. We use M-Pesa. I have never heard of M-Pesa being hacked. I've heard of shenanigans between some Safaricom staff and
watu wa committee.
Watu wa committee.
Yes.
That is human interference. But in terms of M-Pesa itself, every day over 100 billion shillings is transacted by ordinary Kenyans through M-Pesa. That is trust. Nobody questions where that money is going, whether it's going. Now, with that technology, we can actually integrate voting whereby you're registered with your ID and your SIM card, because all SIM cards are legally registered. And if you say if we say every person in Kenya who's a registered voter has to have a registered SIM card, let me tell you, in 5 minutes, you conduct an election and we will know the results by the 10th minute.
You said it's
for
from
every
where?
position.
You said it's from where?
No, blockchain is just the technology.
It's just like with your phone.
Yes.
In your house or wherever you are, whether you're working here or in the. If we say the voting period is between 8 a.m.
and 5 p.m.
Actually, we would vote. We would even say it's 1 hour. Okay.
Yeah.
But to give people time, we say in between the next 3 hours, make your vote wherever you are, whether you're traveling in a bus or wherever. On your phone, you go the same way you do M-Pesa. You get the menu. You vote for your candidates from MCA to women rep to governor to whatever. You don't even need to go to your county. Now, there's something called electoral interference. Rigging elections is not just a matter of stuffing ballot boxes.
Sure.
It's part of it is making it hard for people to vote. The people you don't want to vote. So we've seen people being moved from one constituency to another. We've seen dates since Moi's time being put on during Christmas when people have already traveled
to shags,
yet they registered in towns or in urban centers to make sure that it becomes expensive for them to go and vote. That is what electoral interference is all about. This eliminates all that.
Yeah.
You and your mobile phone. So the work of the IEBC then would be to make sure that they train those who are not very conversant with their devices. Hata mulika mwizi, you can vote with any phone.
Yeah, USSD.
USSD. And we can even create a space where those who are not able, who are technically challenged,
Like
can then
grandmother.
visit the chief's office or somewhere within
And be
their
assisted.
And we remove this barrier. Russia with its population, Brazil with its population, India with 1.4 billion, I think over 400 million registered voters.
Actually, Oswago has told us 900 million registered
900
voters.
million The election takes 1 hour. Within 1 hour, you know.
Do they use blockchain?
It's the same as mobile, whatever.
Yeah.
You just vote from wherever you are. You know.
Now, how do we eliminate the issue of having a dead person voting? For example, let's say someone died yesterday. Obviously here in Kenya, by the time tumzike tufanye nini, Kenyans, we like taking this time to bury our loved ones. Yeah. What if I take my loved one's phone? Maybe it's a cousin who has passed on. I take his phone and I have voted on mine, but I vote on my cousin's phone as well, or my wife's phone, or whoever. Yeah.
So Huduma number, the original Huduma number, the proposal that was given to government before it was hijacked by people, entrepreneurs, which is a story in itself.
Yeah.
The original proposal was a system where you have one number for every Kenyan. This number, usually it's given at birth, and that number becomes your ID number, becomes your birth certificate number, becomes your ID number, becomes your index number when you're in high school.
My PIN number, KRA
PIN number, everything. When you die, that number is retired. And that will happen where if you die in a hospital or wherever you die, immediately is registered. So that IBC will not register voters. Once you legally you attain a certain age, you're eligible.
You're now a voter.
You're a voter. You don't need to. All these things of registering voters for people who already have IDs. Again, it's a way of creating
that interference you're talking about.
And differentiating some people.
Okay.
To make sure that. So what Kenya does is that we have an ID database, we have a school database, we have a death database, we have a
KRA
database. All these databases need to be one. But the reason they are separate is because each database is a source of revenue for some cartel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the corrupt nature of this country. So remember last time we talked about extraction. So all those databases are extraction points for some cartels.
Okay.
That's why it's very hard to do even for we have very good civil servants in this country, but they are not able to do their job because other interests, political interests. If you look at the cost of elections in Kenya, I think Oswaga might have talked about that, is because of the people who are benefiting from that tendering process. It's not about making sure that the elections are free and fair.
Okay.
It's about how much, what percentage will I get when you buy Kim kits? Who are we appointing to be the IEBC chair? Because there's so much money being spent on election, their mandate is to steal a certain percentage of that money to help the current regime during you go and bribe voters in the next election. So from that point of view, no, it's what it is. It's what it is. This is Kenya. Everybody who's appointed any place where there's revenue being generated for government, they have a clear mandate. Their position is, and that's why you always appoint people who are qualified paper-wise in terms of academic papers, but flawed character. They are known either to have cases, corruption cases in court, or criminal cases, or related to certain individuals who are powerful, because they are compromisable, because they have a clear mandate to extract on behalf of the regime in power.
All right. Yes. So we recently just saw yesterday Boniface Mwangi was presented in court and was released on a bond of 1 million. Now his charges started off as terrorism, then something changed to possession of firearms. In the view of Kenyans, they're looking at that situation and they're like, hey, they're targeting Boniface Mwangi and so on and so forth. But then again, we have civil society groups who are, looking at it as a clear sign of attacking democracy and voices that are vocal about certain issues. What are your thoughts on it?
So the playbook current and past regimes have used is from a book. It's called Machiavellian, and it's well captured in Green's book, The 48 Laws of Power. And one of those laws say, strike the shepherd, scatter the sheep, which is a verse in the Bible. If you want to scatter people, human rights defenders, Gen Zs who are protesting, remember the question last year was, who are your leaders? Why? Because leaders can be compromised. They can be abducted, killed, bought, intimidated,
killed.
Now, Boniface has been vocal since even before June 25th. He's part of the social justice movement.
Right.
And in fact, most Kenyans don't realize that before the protests that led to June 25th last year, there were protests by the social justice movement, just that they didn't get the kind of numbers. Even a week earlier, activists were in the streets. About 300 activists were in the streets from the social justice working group. Boniface has been part of that group. In fact, not just Boniface was arrested. My comrades at Kongamano and Mapinduzi, remember when I was here? Yeah, they were arrested and branded the procurers of goods. Actually, their next mention is tomorrow. This is the same. Last time we talked about echoes of colonialism. Is the same script that was used, whereby Dedan Kimathi, until Kibaki became president, was a terrorist. Was branded a terrorist.
What do you mean? Up until 2002, Dedan Kimathi?
Yeah, when Kibaki came into power, that's when they removed his terrorism
moniker.
And Nelson Mandela. Until, I think, was it Bill Clinton or something?
Yeah.
He was regarded as a terrorist. And these are Western... this is what the West does. Western, the colonial, it's a tactic. Anybody who's a critic that you're unable to deal with, and part of the way they're unable to deal with it is because during Moi's time, legally, detention was in our constitution. You could detain people you don't like, or people who are critical, or people you think who are enemies of the state, or
the dissenting voices, like we like calling them.
Yeah, like Raila Odinga was, I think, one of the longest detainees. Him and Koigu Amwera around more than 9 years. Just put somebody in committee, and they'll never be heard or seen. The Constitution 2010 does not allow that. And you cannot even hold legally somebody more than 24 hours. Even a murderer who caught red-handed, unless you have
sufficient evidence.
Sufficient evidence, and that's not the work of the DCI to decide that. You have to present that evidence before a magistrate or a judge, and then the judge decides whether this person deserves to be held.
Early this morning, we were discussing with Mungala here, and the issue came up, this issue of this narrative of terrorists. When there are people that we know about, like look at the case of Boniface Mwangi, is somebody that we've known for the longest time. We have known him as an activist for the longest time. But right now, I don't know where that word was in the constitution. So just suddenly it has appeared that now these people are being termed as terrorists. We have also seen those politicians who have been on the side of the opposition, some of them also being termed as funding or fueling terrorism in Kenya. So we were asking ourselves, this terrorism, can we redefine it?
There's a saying, a quote, I can't remember by who, but I can paraphrase. It says that one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. And we've seen freedom fighters, which is what Boniface Mwangi, I, and other activists are, being branded as terrorists. The same way the Kimadis and the Mau Mau and other freedom fighters were branded as terrorists. In the current situation, that word was first used a few weeks ago after the Kikuyu law courts were touched.
Yes.
By the Chief Justice Martha Koome. She said it is not activists who burnt
down,
and it is not Gen Zs who burnt down the law courts. It was an act of terrorism. And now the state has picked up that word to use it, to turn it around, to shape a certain narrative. And because the terrorism laws allow somebody to be held for a longer period, not the stipulated 24 hours. With terrorism laws, you can hold someone up to 21 days and that kind of thing. So that is what they're using but also the bails are quite high for terrorism. So you can terrify parents and young people. These young jobless people, imagine you're a young jobless person and you've been slapped with a 300,000 bail. I know some group, there are some 2 young people from Matu in Ukambani. Their parents were in the process of selling land to get them out on bail. They were in that process until this initiative. There's an initiative that by Kenyans, very brave Kenyans, that is now fundraising for bail. In fact, I think the last time I checked, about 64 Kenyans had been
fundraised
been fundraised for, paid for bails of around between 10,000 and 50,000. Kenyans have come out, they've contributed. I think over 1.something million has been raised. LSK has provided
legal
counsels who are not, who are pro bono. They're not charging legal fees, but they've also negotiated with the judiciary to reduce the fees from the bails from 300,000 to 50. Now manageable. Now it's manageable. I think now it's 10. And all these young people who are being branded terrorists are just active citizens as per Article 1 of the Constitution. Whereby we the people give ourselves this Constitution, and but also the Bill of Rights allows you to hold leadership to account. But then you have a leadership that does not want to be accountable. And so the modern day freedom fighter who's being branded as a terrorist, and unfortunately that narrative is not selling. The other question we need to ask is why the office of ODPP has agreed to be weaponized against the young people of Kenya unconstitutionally. But the beauty of it, I wrote an article about this published in the This is Africa, is that we are at a time, if we then contend that the current Kenyan regime is a continuation of British state, and we had said the British Empire, so they said the British Empire the sun will never set on the British Empire. We are experiencing the sunset, the final death rose. We are at the funeral, of that state. The Kanu state that Joseph Kamodo, who was a Secretary General of Kanu, said will rule for 100 years. They have lost ideas. They have lost the population. They have no new ideas. And the young people are said, enough is enough. So we are actually at that point. So what you're seeing is the kicks of a dying horse, as it is. That's why these attempts at branding young Kenyans as terrorists, young Kenyans who love their countries, who are coming out, they have coded the Constitution. It's
right.
They are conducting classes on X and on TikTok, educating each other about their country and their society, and they are being branded terrorists because of that. That cannot wash in modern day because way back we had only VOK. when Moi was president. And this playbook is of the Moi era. And by era, I mean ERROR, Moi era. 24 years when Kenya went down. I remember when I was growing up then, you could not even mention his name. You could not mention Moi's name. Even in your house. You could not discuss Moi in your house. You cannot take us back there.
Yeah.
We will not, that genie is gone. You cannot take us back there. So, branding people terrorists. In fact, what is going to happen is that it's going to be very expensive for future governments because all these people are going to sue for compensation.
Yeah.
For character assassination, for being taken fingerprints and whatever by DCI, being put in, reputation damage. This is going to cost billions and billions and billions to the state of Kenya, what the current regime is doing. But it also means that people are waking up and seeing that this state, it came with a lot of fanfare.
Right.
I remember the inauguration, Senator Mtata observed that when the Ruto was given the sword and the constitution, he put the constitution aside and lifted up the sword.
Yeah.
But also there is another thing I observed that day. I don't know whether many people did. If you look at the presidents who were invited for that inauguration, there was a characteristic of those presidents and there was a message being sent. Because these are presidents who have refused, African presidents who have refused to leave power. The Congolese, Nguesso, Kagame, Museveni, others. So I think the president was sending a message, and I commented about it. But unfortunately, these are very different countries. This is not Kenya of the 90s. This is a very different Kenya with at least one thing the regime has done well. The previous regimes have done well is educate Kenyans to the point where they cannot be contained. They cannot be put in a bottle and told to just shut up.
So here's a situation we're looking at then. If they're going for what I consider Boniface Mwangi a bigwig when it comes to activism. So if they can do this to Boni, what about the guys pale kwa mtaa when they want to get out there and just have their voices heard? They'll look at this situation and they'll be like, manze kama wamedu hivi Boni sasa mimi je.
That's actually the intention. That's why I talked about that quote of strike the shepherd to scatter the sheep. So if you let's say someone is grazing sheep and you're the shepherd there, if a lion comes for you and attacks you, those sheep will scatter because there's nobody to give them guidance and leadership. So the arrest of prominent activists like members of Kongamano, Mapinduzi, Boniface and others is supposed to scare the young people. And in fact, if you look at the abductions that have happened since June 25th last year, it is not activists who've been abducted because they are part of movements. It is the individual Kenyans, young Kenyans who are coming up and standing up and speaking up, who are not, so that they don't get organized because they were mobilized to come out, but they were not organized as part of an organization structure with leadership and that kind of thing. So to try and prevent that, they were being picked up and disappeared. And Boniface kind of emerges as a potential leader. But remember, even when he was in the streets on June 25th last year, even the young people told him, "You're not our leader." In fact, one slapped him.
I remember he was attacked.
He was attacked in the streets. "You're not our leader." And what we have is a generation that is what we call, it's not leaderless. That is the wrong word. It is leaderful. There are many leaders who have emerged, who are leading within the Gen Z movement, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on X, whether it's other spaces. And they are educating each other. And the government does not know how to deal with this. Because Kitambo, you could pick up Boniface. In fact, what it is likely to do is actually energize those young people. Because I think you saw the phenomenon in the last few weeks where kids were writing their wills and they were paying for their funeral homes. And they are telling their parents, if I'm shot, these are my wishes. I saw something on June 25th, 2024 that I'd never seen. As much as I've watched, and I've lived long enough, I've watched protests across the world on TV, on CNN and on Al Jazeera and whatever. I've never seen a protest where people are being shot at and they don't retreat. Usually will be shot at, this is at Parliament,
Yeah.
during the occupying of Parliament, that people move forward, but if you shoot at people who are in front, usually people will retreat. Maybe they might surge later, but they retreat first to reorganize. In our case, on June 25th, people are being shot, falling down, and the movement,
the crowd continued.
The crowd was just continuing into Parliament. Even the people, the snipers who were shooting them ran away. We could see them on TV running away because they had never been trained for something like this.
Yeah,
that is what this government is dealing with, and it's refusing to accept.
Someone sat on one of those chairs there, and he said that the government is afraid of this animal that is now called Gen Z, but also the opposition is scared of this same animal. Basically, the politicians are afraid of dealing.
Which opposition?
The opposition that is currently there. He didn't mention specific names, but the point is, he was talking about basically whether they are politicians in government or politicians out of government. They are afraid of this animal called Gen Z, because just like you've said, they are very fearless, leaderful, like you've said. But we are seeing quarters asking for conversations. You saw what Raila said. He said intergenerational conclave, and so on and so forth. Others are saying at the end of the day, fine, leaderless, tribeless, but we need to own, because at the end of the day, you come from somewhere. We ni Mkamba, we ni Mjaluo, we ni Mkisi, hata kama huwezi ongea hizo lugha, at the end of the day you come from somewhere, so you cannot run away from that identity. So in terms of conversation, in terms of identity, in terms of this whole issue of being leaderless, how long do you think they can hold this?
So again, you said that it's not leaderless, it's leaderful. And part of the challenge of the current political class is the inability to imagine a different Kenya where they are not in charge. So right now, the reason I asked which opposition is that there's no opposition. There's no difference between the people coalescing around Matiang'i and Kalonzo and Rigathi Gachagua and the people with Ruto. They are the same guys. With Raila, I know. They are the same. That's when I talked about KANU. This is a sunset of the KANU regime. They are all KANU.
They will not see 100 years.
Yeah. So they cannot imagine. The organizing is going on. It's just not in their way, because to them organizing is, can they join DCP? Can they join? In fact, KANU. There's been an attempt to, for example, all these charges you're seeing, the terrorism charges, have been an attempt to link activists to the former deputy president Gachagua, which is a tired attempt. Gachagua is also struggling to own Gen Z, but they don't want him. They know him. They're like, we will embrace you to send Kasongo home, but we cannot elect you. We know who you are and we have your receipts. In fact, just very recent receipts. In fact, Maandamano of 2023, we have videos of him, saying, the exact thing Ruto is saying. Instructing police to shoot to kill. All these things, we have the receipts. So now they are drowning in that sea and unable to breathe, and they don't know how to breathe. And the solutions they're offering are the solutions of the 1990s and the 1980s and 1970s. And the Jay-Z are saying, hatutaki kujua nani alikudhuru. We don't want historical narratives of who harmed who, or you're hurt by who, and then now you expect us to mourn and join you. And no, we are jobless. We want dignity. We want to live in a country that is not corrupt. This is our agenda, and you are not the one
to deliver it.
Let me just illustrate that in another way. When the organizing was happening in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was either socialist, it was ideological, capitalist, or whatever, and the socialists or communists would come with the with the socialist red flag, like the one the Chinese have or the Russian had then. Today, Kenyans are going to the streets with the Kenyan flag, which means what? It is not ideological. They are saying, if you're saying Kenya, Kenya is not an amorphous thing. It is us. We are Kenyans. We make Kenya Kenya. And this flag is not for your 4x4s to put in front there. It is our flag. They have claimed. And you have been unable, you are the people who are parasites, who have been looting our country. You are unable to lead us. We gave you the mandate to lead us. You are unable to lead us. You are taking back our power. The flag is ours. You leave and go. Ruto must go means we have seen you, we have given you time, you are unable to take us anywhere, go.
Okay.
We will figure it out.
We sat here again with the SecGen of Jubilee Party, that is Jeremiah Kioni. And Jeremiah Kioni was saying that the political class has also realized that what they thought they were offering the Gen Zs and what the Gen Zs actually want, and by Gen Zs here we mean the rest of Kenya. What
Gen Zote now.
Gen Zote. So what we think Gen Zote wanataka is not what they have been saying, and so they found that there's a disconnect, and they said that they perhaps need to change the narrative. Now, given that and having that in mind, the solutions that Gen Zote wanatafuta watazipata kivipi? Because fine, Ruto must go. If we do decide in 2027 to vote in a different government, first of all, does that government even exist? The alternative to President Ruto. We've seen opposition trying to align themselves, Kalonzo, DCP, Martha Karua, Natembea, and who else? And a couple of others I'm forgetting right now. So if these individuals come together the way they have come together, are they offering any solutions, or Gen Z wanataka nani? Because at the end of the day, someone needs to be elected in 2027.
Part of the challenge Kenyans are having, and especially when you look at the legacy politicians, is the inability, is a crisis of imagination. We normally use this example. If you're going to hire house help in your house, you use a very strict
criteria of
choosing them, because it's someone who you're going to trust with your house, with your kids, with whatever your possessions
food
that are within that house, your food, someone who's going to sleep in your house, who's a stranger who has come in. So you're very meticulous in terms of selecting them and the questions that you ask. Then when it comes to politicians, we use no criteria. Mostly we just see them come with flashy cars and dish out cash, and then we say we want your kiongozi. Then we entrust them with the resources of an entire nation. Now that is what is changing. Okay? And it's not that there are no leaders who can run this country better. There are people here, professionals, who are running multi-billion shillings companies like Safaricom. The revenue of Safaricom is over 100 billion a year. Just one company. We have other multinationals. Those people who are leading them are leaders. We have other organizations, NGOs. We have religious organizations that are very well run, doing great things in this country. We have CBOs. We have, name it. We are not short of leaders. What we are short of is politicians. Now, the political class has created a scenario whereby we think this country cannot run without them. But they're just a few. There are less than 500 politicians, actually, when you think about it, in a country of 55 million people. That's 0.000 something percent. But they've been able to use the media, use the money that they loot to create this bigger-than-life persona. And this is what is crumbling as we speak. That's why even Jubilee does not know which way to go. That's why most of these political parties have no solution. So leaders emerge when a situation happens. And I know you want to ask a question. It is Charles Jonjo, who was a KANU guy, who said that politics is dirty. Now, that narrative has been repeated so many times that a lot of people who could make good leaders in the political space have refused to go in because they don't want to be dirtied. They have reputations, they have values that they care about, and they don't want to roll in the mud with these metaphorical pigs. Because when you roll in the mud with a pig, nobody can tell the difference. You'll all get muddy. So what this moment is presenting Kenyans now is a time to reflect and for leaders to emerge. And you have leaders emerging who can emerge from very different spaces. Professional associations. Look at what LSK has done. Look at the leadership they have provided. Look at what Kenya Medical Professionals Union has done. KMPDU doctors have done. Now you're waiting for the engineers, for the surveyors, for farmers associations, for bankers, for others to stand up and say, if Kenya goes down, it goes down with all of us.
All of us, yes.
We cannot let a small cabal of political players run this country down.
Okay.
So the leadership is there and is going to emerge.
Mr. Kioni, while he was seated there, he talked about how it will be a challenge. It will be hard for the young people to lead this country because of the deep state. And of course, this deep state is a thing that we've been hearing from the past, like you're saying, from the old political faces that we've known. So what do you have to say about that? Because like you've pointed out the medical side of the medical, that they have already started getting into the line of change. So what do you have to say about the rest of the other leaders?
So that's a very good question. So first of all, is it in the interest of Jeremiah Kioni and Jubilee as the deep state to misrepresent that? Because it is in his interest to create that scenario that only they can provide leadership. Now the thing is, if you look at June 25th, what happened after the attacks on citizens, leadership emerged and mobilized resources to the tune of 30 million to pay hospital bills. In fact, people were shocked. I know I've spoken to some of the people who are doing the fundraising. They were shocked at how affordable it is to treat some of these things. People had gunshot wounds. People had, crazy, broken limbs and that kind of thing. And that 30,000 was able to cater for all these people from across the country, including funerals and that kind of thing. Imagine 30 million shillings in a sector where we allocate over 200 billion in healthcare and Kenyans don't get healthcare. So people are like, oh, you mean these guys are looting this much? And if you look at what the government did at that time, they tried to pass legislation to limit public fundraising. Why? Because the minute citizens can fundraise from among themselves for their own civic actions, it becomes an existential threat to the regime. So they have to clamp down on fundraising. Look at the attacks on Hanifa. Okay? Look at the attacks on when Baba Albert Ojwang, when the public fundraised. That money was, I think there was a hack and 40 million disappeared. Why? Because this is a threat. Baba Boniface Kariuki, the mother was crying that money has disappeared. Where do you think that money is going? I'd like to put, I have no evidence, but I'd like to put to you that the state is involved in trying to create disconnect. When we fundraised for the bail, in the last 1 week we've been fundraising for bail for the young people. Even Kindiki himself, the deputy president, castigated us. Can you imagine what is wrong with fundraising to help young people? We are fundraising for terrorists. That's the language he used.
Okay.
And not just him. I think some senior people in government. That shows the threat. Now, I'm answering your question in a roundabout. What is emerging now is that the Gen Z do not need a politician who has looted the economy to come and dish out money to provide leadership. And that is what is scaring about the so-called deep state. We are not sold to that narrative anymore. We will fundraise, we'll fund our own candidates. Yeah. We will, I think you've seen the conversation around Chief Justice Maraga and Okiya Omtata. Kenyans are telling them, come together and we will fund you. I remember being involved in one of the first online fundraising initiatives, Kenyans for Kenyans. It was many Kenyan organizations came together around. There was a famine in
I remember the
Turkana.
Turkana situation.
Turkana, and 750 million was raised through M-Pesa, through 10 shillings, 20 shillings, and that kind of thing. And that also, went through the way it went, because again, it could not be let to succeed, because then it's a threat. Because then, if you can fundraise among yourselves, then you don't need Mheshimiwa to come and bring you handouts. Then the Mheshimiwa is rendered useless. And that is a threat to the so-called deep state. But look at how we deal with our issues as Kenyans. I'm sure you guys belong to chamas, whether it's investments, whether it's chama for just buying a family house, a carpet, or utensils, or that kind of thing. It is African. That is what is called African socialism. We come together, we pool resources, we handle our issues. Hospital bills, school fees for kids, sending our kids to go and study in the US. That is the nature of the Kenyan state. Hii ingine ya sijui Harambee za politician, it is a strange thing. And that's why it's even been banned constitutionally.
Right.
So, what they are scared of is Gen Z succeeding in getting to a point where, remember the scenario when we were starting, I talked about this election where you just give boxes to somebody and they conduct an election. We don't need to bring, how many billions to allocate to do that, because you've restored trust. That is what they are scared, because then their power is about money. And when money is removed from the equation, when anybody can be a leader, then they will have leaders that are not controllable by the status quo or by the so-called deep state. And it's that point that is scaring. Right now, when I talked about there's no opposition, is that all of them are together. I have a theory that Rigiji has been created by the state, okay? Because Raila has gotten tired. He's aged, he's old, he's losing cognition and that kind of thing. So the state needs a binary. What is a binary? Like there are two sides.
An antagonist and a protagonist.
Yeah, you're either with us
or against us.
And so you create that scenario. And then when you do that, you block the chances of any other people emerging into leadership position.
That's a very deep conspiracy.
Yeah. So they always it's there. If you study political science, it's there. In fact, it's that thing of creating an enemy. If you remember last time we talked about the Westphalian state, that you have to create an enemy. It's political science. And then you use that enemy. Now you tell the people, I'm the one who's going to help you defeat that enemy. And if you in the Westphalian state, if you don't have a protagonist, then you cannot create emotion and euphoria against. So Raila has been that demagogue, that Jitu, that Muganga, that
Demoni,
and he's played that game very well. Every time he creates to an election, then the state continues, the KANU continues, and he gets people anasema anapata handshake, he gets his check. But now, after June 25th, the situation changed. He came on board, and he could not control this thing. He could not control the Gen Zs. They can see through him. They have done political science. They can see the game. So, the theory is, now the conspiracy is this. That the whatever, because Ruto is a political, you can say he's a professor of politics. He's extremely adept at politics. He might not be able to run a country, but he knows how to play politics. So, to avoid these leaders emerging, he created the leader. He tried it with Kalonzo, but Kalonzo is there deflated and that kind of thing. He tried. That's what NADCO was about. It's about creating now the person to succeed. Right? But Kalonzo could not. Remember also at that time, Ligiji was trying to gain ground in Mount Kenya. Nobody cared about him in Mount Kenya.
Right.
Until after the
impeachment.
The impeachment. All of a sudden now he's become a force. And he's the one saying Kasongo this, Kasongo that. The conspiracy theory is that he's actually a creation of Kasongo to make sure that there are no other leaders emerging who might be a surprise because he's a known quality. He's been with Kasongo since the student leadership days in University of Nairobi.
Okay.
They've worked together. He's worked in government. He's a state project. That is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Wow. It's a funny one.
Hizo ndizo zile story mnaonanga kwa movies.
Unabaki umefungwa tu wacho hapo. So
yeah. So in terms of democracy then, what are we saying? Because clearly if what you're saying and let me live in a world where what you're saying is true, then does democracy exist?
Democracy exists. We wouldn't be calling young people terrorists if we didn't have democracy. Because what that points to is a state, a regime that is clueless in terms of how to offer solutions to the young people. And then is not able to apply the constitution, implement the constitution to make sure that the country becomes productive because it's a democratic country and you cannot get away with dictatorship. So what do? You call people terrorists. That actually is the biggest sign that you have democracy. And the fact that despite all that repression, Kenyans, young Kenyans, now even older Kenyans are coming out, are speaking out, are coming together.
Yeah.
That is democracy. And democracy is a contested space. It's something, it's not like a pill you swallow and then now you're democratic. Look at the US, the regression that has happened. Now, I think the average U.S. citizen knows that the Senate and the what is it
Congress
called? The Congress are not serving their interests. They're serving the interest of the billionaire class. So every other time, societies have to reinvent themselves. But also crucially, remember the conversation we started was, echoes of colonialism, is that this state was not ours. We did not create it. We started creating our state by passing the 2010 constitution, which is the one that has been resisted by the regime, which is one they don't know how to deal with because their modus operandi is a colonial one. So actually what you're going through are the birth pain, the labor pains of democracy. Okay? And it is now clear for everybody to see that these guys in power, even the so-called opposition, have nothing to offer Kenya. Kenya and the population, which is 75% under 35, have moved on. And they're asking for things these guys don't even have any idea. And there are people who've surrounded. Just look at the circus. The president's PA goes to Lamu, a very conservative Muslim community, and he's parading Sabina Chege there and telling her to shake her butt. That is the PA, the first assistant to the president of Kenya. And then you see women, KK women, with this narrative of the sexualization of politics. That is the solution they are coming in. So one solution is kill young Kenyans. The next solution is sexualize. I mean, what is that? And that's why our conversation. I founded an organization called Mzalendo Foundation.
Right.
And we are talking about Utu. Utu means the philosophy of Utu means I am because you are, and I cannot do anything to harm you. And we want to live in a society that does not harm us, that treats us with dignity, that offers jobs to young people. And we are saying, through this philosophy, you as a citizen can ask your pastor or your imam, or if you're religious. If you are not religious, you can have this philosophy as your guiding light. You can say that our leaders must have Utu.
Okay.
They cannot order police to shoot our legs or to shoot wherever. Like, what kind of thinking goes into the fact that if you're shot in the leg, you won't die? A bullet will bleed, whether you're shot in the leg or shot wherever. That it will not see us as commodities. It will not treat Kenyans as commodities who can be discarded anyhowly.
Okay.
In protection of property.
Right.
That life is going to have meaning. That is the spirit of Utu. And we are asking our leaders to rediscover their Utu. And by leaders, I mean religious leaders, civil society leaders, business leaders,
political
leaders, all leaders in all spaces, can they rediscover their humanity?
Okay.
And because they seem not to have solutions, can we have maybe a national convention whereby in a process of national convention, so going back to the conclave that was suggested by
Raila
Odinga, we want a national convention, but we don't want them in that national convention.
We want
they've tried their thing.
Okay.
It has not worked.
All right.
Watuachie.
Sawa.
Yeah.
Mzalendo Kiama, thank you so much. That's all the time we had. Interesting conversation. I am now very picked, and I'd probably pick your brain even after this about this conspiracy of creating a monster so that you can be the hero of the story. You know, the villain and the hero. All right.